Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. And Mike, it's finally here. Game week. Yay.
No more talking season, right?
Yes, it's done. We're here. It's college football is here. And we have a lot of questions about that. So we're going to jump right in, Mike. Our first question is from Murphy the Shoat, who asks, did you see Otis's prediction of an 8-4 season for the Hogs? He's getting roasted as a homer and a media hack.
Yeah, I don't worry too much about people that say stuff like that because the sum total of their knowledge of this football team is what happened last year. Otis is a guy that outworks everybody. I go all the way back to when he was first covering Arkansas's recruiting, and I would notice that other recruiting guys would be calling people on the phone to find out about certain players. He would actually go watch them play. A lot of people don't know this, but Otis was down in Houston looking at a guy that Arkansas was recruiting. This was when Danny Ford was here as the head coach. He found Clint Sterner, who had been a wide receiver but had been switched to quarterback, and was impressed and called Danny Ford, and they ended up looking at him and ended up bringing him to Arkansas. And, you know, good grief, Clint Sterner, are you kidding me? Ended up playing for the Dallas Cowboys. So you're going to ask me to listen to some meatball like that, not Mousetown or whoever that was.
Not Murphy the Shoat.
Yeah, not him, but whoever's been saying this.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
One guy works at it, and the other people just go, they're not any good. They weren't any good last year.
And I hate predictions. We've talked about this off air too, Mike. I just hate having to predict anything because it's just like, hey, we see this, we like what we see.
Well, some people love it. They love making predictions. They won 4 games last year. They're going to win 4 games this year. See how easy that is?
It is. It is easy to make predictions. But you look, like even college football this weekend, I watched them make their game predictions on College Game Day, and how many of them picked FSU over? I think it was their guest picker that picked Georgia. He was the only one to pick Georgia Tech to win the game. And so they overlooked Georgia Tech. What are they doing with Arkansas right now?
Yeah. So
people are overlooking the Hogs. So we'll see what happens. Mousetown says Feinbaum claims that Pittman is about to go over a cliff this season. I can't stand Feinbaum.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, right. Mousetown says Feinbaum claims that Pittman is about to go over a cliff this season. I can't stand Feinbaum with his Dumbo ears, but he might be right about this. What do you think?
I don't think he's right. Here's the thing about Feinbaum. I will concede that he's got a difficult job. Anybody that covers a whole conference, or especially these national reporters, I made a decision very early in my career. I thought, what do I really want to do? And I'd been here for a couple of years, and I thought, I really like the fact that when you cover one team, you can roll up your sleeves, get to know all the coaches, all the players, all the athletes, and really know what you're talking about. Now, nobody's right all the time, but you've at least got real information that changes all the time. When you're somebody like Feinbaum, and we talked about this back on Media Day, he's just like a lot of those people at Media Day. He may know who Arkansas' starting quarterback is. Does he know who
does he know who TJ Metcalf is?
Does he know anything about Rodney Hill, who looks like he's going to be the backup running back for the first game? Does he know about all these changes in the secondary? Does he know about the rotation in the D-line? He doesn't know these things. So he's just making a blanket statement about a team that he knows very little about, and he's doing it, when I made the reference to the fans reacting to Otis, he's doing it based on last year. I got news for him and everybody else. 2003 is not 2004. Things change. If you don't believe me, go back and look at the 1999 season, the 2000 season, the 2015 season, the 2016 season. Things change from year to year.
They do, Mike. And the other thing, too, about Paul Feinbaum and these national guys is they're also putting stuff out there that they know will get views, that will get watched and things like that. So they're going to make some statements that you go, wait a second, I don't agree with that, just to get views, to get people to watch their show. So I agree with you there, Mike. David Porter says everyone is fawning over Petrino and Pittman. Doesn't seem to have problems with it. It could be that he's hoping to keep his job, but I get the feeling that he's just a humble fellow who can stand someone else in the limelight. What do you think?
Well, I do think he's a humble guy that doesn't have an issue with people looking at Petrino and thinking, because they've been saying this all along, they just brought him in to be the head coach, which I don't believe is true. But here's the thing that really matters. Those guys get along. I've watched them, I've asked people, they truly get along. And Petrino, whether you believe it or not, did not come here to become the head coach. He came here to be the offensive coordinator. He likes his job. He likes working for Sam Pittman. He made a statement the other day in his press conference. Somebody was asking him if he was all excited about going to Little Rock and getting to coach for Arkansas again and all this stuff like he did before. He said, I don't have time to be excited. He said, our head coach is working us into the ground.
He is, yeah.
He's just working us into the ground. But he likes that. And so I don't think Pittman, from that very first press conference where they were seen together and he was so comfortable with it and everybody was standing up in Bud Walton and cheering him, he didn't get mad about that. So no, that doesn't bother him, but it's more than that. It's that he really does like having him here. And I think if you were to ask Bobby Petrino, he would say, I want to be here for the rest of my career as offensive coordinator, and I want Sam Pittman to be my boss.
I said this last week, Mike, but it was telling when Bobby Petrino got asked about NIL and how much influence he has on that, or how much, he has his hands in that kind of realm for Arkansas. And I love what his answer is. I don't need to deal with that. Sam Pittman, Hunter Yurchek do a good job. I just get to coach. And he lit up. He was so excited about that. I said, that told me all I need to know. He is excited to be back here and coaching and just worry about running an offense. Yep. Just worry about running an offense and not all the other stuff that comes with being a head coach. Armand Abbey asks, what's your reaction? Oh, I love this question. What's your reaction to the UAPB receiver saying Arkansas is big but slow in the secondary? Doesn't seem like a wise thing to bring up, even if you believe it.
Yeah, I was confused when that first happened because I don't know what I was reading, but I thought their head coach said it. If the head coach says it, it's dumb. Players say stuff like that all the time. What that says to me is he's confident. He's watched all the stuff and he's happy with his own abilities. Should he have said that? Probably not. But I'm not going to criticize him for that. Here's the bottom line. I do know, because Sam Pittman said this in his evaluation of UAPB at his press conference on Monday. He said they're fast. He said they're going to try to stretch our secondary. So they're going to be a good test for us. So we'll see if the kid's right or not.
We'll see.
It could end up being a really silly thing to say, but by the same token, I guess he could be right. I don't know.
He's trying to, excite his team. They know that they're 55-point or whatever it is right now underdogs.
Yeah.
So I think he's trying to maybe motivate his team a little bit by making a statement like that to local media. Maybe. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, on the surface, it's not a very smart thing to say, but I understand why a player thinks like that.
Absolutely. Twinkie275 wants to know, what's y'all's thoughts for worst case and then best case for the win-loss total in football this season? You know me, I believe it can be at least a 10-2 regular season and then add a postseason win or four, Mike. That is some major confidence right there.
So I guess he's a fan hack and a fan homer because he's beyond Otis. He's got it at 10 games.
Hack. I love it.
He's got it beyond Otis. I wouldn't go that far. I'm going to go and again, I don't like to do this.
I hate predictions.
Asking, so I'll go 7-5, one below Otis.
Okay, I like it. I think 7-5. A lot of people would appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm not that optimistic, only because I get a little nervous with that schedule that they have this year. It's a tough schedule. Let's not lie. It's a tough schedule. So I'm going to go with the opposite of you. I think 5-7.
Okay, here's your issue. You weren't around when Petrino was here before, so you don't understand. What you're basically saying, whether you realize it or not, is that the hiring of Bobby Petrino and his running the offense as opposed to Dan Enos is going to account for one more win. That's one more win. And I'm going, no.
Okay, I see your point there. I see your point. I just look at that schedule and I go, where can I find 7 wins, right? That's my thing, right? Okay. I'm going through and I feel comfortable saying, I think 5 wins. Yeah, I feel comfortable saying that. If they get a couple more, hey, that's why I don't like doing predictions. The Bionic Pig wants to know, do you agree that the absolute best thing Arkansas is going for right now is the unknown or the perception by the opponents on our schedule that this team is not a threat?
I think it might be a help in the Oklahoma State game.
Okay.
If Arkansas were to win that game, then that's all out the window. You don't fool people for long. Mm-hmm. You can be under-respected, do you think people are going to sleep on Georgia Tech now? They know they're a lot better.
Yeah.
So that only works for one game. What I think is going to help this team this year for the whole season is what I've talked about before. They had a really good coaching staff. This team is not fractured. They don't have these little factions like in high school when these 3 people are talking about those 4 people over there, and then here come 3 more, and they don't like either one of those groups. You don't have that like they did last year. It's unified. They're all helping each other. The way they look at it is the offensive line looks at the defensive line being good enough to help them be prepared to play an SEC game. So, and then I think the secondary, I think they know they're being tested by some fast wide receivers who can jump and a quarterback that can throw. So they're all helping each other. And I think in the end, that's what will make the difference, not whether or not somebody didn't know who they were right now. That, again, that's good for one big win maybe early in the season.
And there's a motivation factor there right now that they're like, people are underestimating us. It works for, you know, them right now. If they start winning games, people are going to go, ooh, no,
then it
circle
all switches.
Arkansas.
You have to have more than that.
Absolutely.
I'll just say that.
Absolutely. S. Giles says, I'm hearing that there's only going to be 35,000 to 40,000 in Little Rock for Thursday's season opener. When will we get an AD that says no more of that? Nobody else plays games in 2 home stadiums.
You know, I've always said that it's going to be difficult if they ever come to a decision to stop those games in War Memorial because there's such tradition and history there. But it is an issue, and it's an issue with recruiting. It's an issue with not having enough home games. I don't know what they're going to do, but Sam Pittman, here's what he did in his press conference. He was he started off talking about, I think this was his opening statement. He talked about being excited. The whole team was excited to go play in Little Rock. We want to be there. It's not that we have to go be there. We look forward to the games in Little Rock. But then he said that doesn't have anything to do with the future of this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going, whoa, what does that mean? Then there was another question we'll get later on that had to do with the game in Jerry World. And when I combined that answer with what he was saying later on and what Pittman talked about later on when he got asked about that, was all these seasons where you're playing a game in Little Rock, but you're also playing a Jerry World game. So in effect, 2 games that are home games aren't really home games.
Right.
And how that affects the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And how this year, for instance, that's the case. You don't have hardly any home games early.
Yeah.
And he's saying that's bad. So I think that's being brought up for a reason. I don't know that they've made the decision. But I've asked myself for a long time now, what's going to happen after the Arkansas State game in 2025? And if you had to ask me right now, I would say I think it's going to come to an end. That's still a difficult decision to make. And I'm not necessarily for it because I've always believed, and I've covered War Memorial games before they started just becoming a 1 game and a non-SEC game or a non-Southwest. I saw big games there. For at least half my career, the biggest games were played there.
Yeah.
And I still understand what those fans are like down there if you're playing a big game, if you're playing LSU down there or Alabama down there. That's a different thing than playing UAPB and only drawing 35,000. That's no reflection on those fans down there.
No.
You're not playing the kind of game. I think they feel insulted a little bit by the fact that you get 1 game there and it's a game like that.
Yeah, I think if you put an SEC opponent there, I think you draw a lot more fans.
Oh, absolutely. It'd be full. It absolutely would be full.
That's a no-brainer there. But also, I go back to what Pittman said as well when he starts talking about, oh, the fans, they're great there. And it's not like they don't want to go there and they don't want to play there. But he also made the point of like, fans can come here too.
Sure.
The fan base is passionate enough that if we give them time to plan, they can get here. They can make it here. I mean, that's like, I get what he's saying.
There was an LSU fan that was a regular caller on sports talk shows in Arkansas for several years, and he was mostly annoying because he always talked about LSU. But when this subject came up, he said, "Why is all this crying about War Memorial?" He said, "Do you hear any LSU fans mad that we don't play play all of our games in Death Valley?"
Yeah.
Is there anybody in LSU fan anywhere mad because we don't go play somewhere else in the state? No. He said, if your program is big enough, and that's what he was saying, your program is not winning enough games. If you win enough games, they won't complain about where you play.
Absolutely. Hot Dogger says, I'm assuming any NIL funds of players are taxable. Does a university have an obligation to provide a player with assistance?
As far as I know, there's no NCAA regulation on that, but you'd be stupid not to do it. You don't want the embarrassment of a player not knowing how to handle that he's got to pay taxes on his NIL money, and then he doesn't at the end of the year, and then he owes a bunch of money. So I think at Arkansas, they're all made aware of this. They can pick whoever they want to do their taxes. They can do it themselves if they think they know how. But there are people they will recommend. And you're probably smart if you take their advice.
Absolutely. And I said this on a previous show when we brought up this conversation about like training athletes and giving them the tools they need for success. I think a tool that they need for success is maybe having somebody come in and explain, hey, this is how you do your taxes and things like that. I mean, they had that in my high school, and that was super beneficial to learn how to do my taxes from somebody. If you don't have a parent or a guardian who can help you with that, to me, that was a very good life lesson.
Exactly.
So having somebody come in and be like, hey, here are the tools you need for success. This is what you need to do every year.
You can't make somebody do it. All you can do is give them advice. But
Absolutely.
I think that for the most part, players are taking that advice.
Absolutely. And whoever their NIL agents are, hopefully they are helping them as well.
That's right.
On that thing, on that side of
That's
things.
the logical person to do it.
Exactly. WV Hog fan asks, since this is the last year to play A&M in Arlington, are there talks to continue playing there against another team?
Now, I checked as late as this morning, and I was told there is no plan in 2025 to play somebody there. This is the last year, and what I was told is that doesn't mean we will never ever play a game there, but there's no immediate plans to come up with an opponent. Some people believe that eventually they'll need the exposure in Texas, and so they might work out a rotating deal with the Big 12. You play Baylor, you play Texas Tech, you play, different teams in the Big 12 and rotate it. But, they don't have the same issue that they had when that Jerry World game was first established. That was the only time they would play down in Texas. Now you've got every well, it's not every other year, but you'd play down in Austin, and then they will play here. Then you'll play them next year. Then
A&M, Texas
A&M. Now that goes into a home and home.
Yeah.
So they'll play A&M here next year, and then so it's an every other year thing. So they're going to be down in Texas with at least one of those games every year. So that takes the place of the Jerry World exposure, I think.
Yeah, and I think the Jerry World game is fun, especially for players, like getting to go to an NFL stadium and play a game there. I know that the Florida fans enjoy doing the Georgia-Florida game at Jacksonville Stadium. So I know that that's a really fun thing. But you have to have like a game, I think, like a premier game to do that with.
This whole War Memorial thing, if they stop playing those games in War Memorial, that might revive the Jerry World game.
Maybe.
But I don't think you're ever going to be playing in Jerry World again if you're playing in War Memorial too, because you're losing 2 games.
That I agree with you. You shouldn't have to lose 2 home games.
That's
I mean,
right.
as home games. Yeah, exactly. WV Hog fan asks, oh, sorry, I just went with that one. Razor Alex 88 says, I hear that Missouri State pulled out of the 2025 matchup. Who would you like to see in place of them on our 2025 schedule?
Well, they already have a team. Who is it? I got it written down there.
Alabama A&M.
Alabama A&M.
Yeah.
Look, that's fine with me. I think if it was up to me, if I'm the AD, and I know fans would hate me as an AD, because my attitude would be, your SEC schedule is tough enough. Every non-conference game I played would be against Bozo Tech. I would be playing everybody. I would be starting off the season saying, well, we got 5 wins when the season starts. All we got to do is win 1 conference game and we're in a bowl game.
You wouldn't schedule anything with any Power 4. No, absolutely not.
No, I wouldn't do it. So I think this is a perfect selection.
I think so as well. Here it is. Hud Wyndham asks, Bobby Petrino is no longer a head coach, but he's still talking like one. Basically, he wants Power 4 schools to start paying mid-majors to go away. What do you think about that?
Well, it was interesting, and he's the first coach I've heard to say this, but he's probably repeating what's going to happen. That's what we hear. If schools end up paying athletes out of their own budget, that is the athletic department budget, you've got to generate more revenue to pay for that. We're talking about millions of extra dollars. And where would that come from? It would come from TV. And it's a negotiation thing. You say, okay, we're going to have to start paying these athletes. We need more money from the TV people. Well, then the TV people are basically going to say, well, if you need more money from us, guess what? Alabama can't play Alabama State. You can't play South Alabama. Is there an Alabama State? South Alabama. You can't play South Alabama. Arkansas, we do not want you playing Missouri State.
Yeah.
We want Power 4 teams to be playing other Power 4 teams from other Power 4 conferences. We don't want any more of these mid-major games. And when I was sort of reading about this and sort of discussing it, because we brought this up on this show before.
We have, yeah.
I was sort of asking myself, what's going to happen with these mid-majors? If they can no longer get this money that they get from playing these games, some of them get $2-3 million guarantee.
Yeah.
So if you play 3 or 4 of those games, you've got a lot of your athletic budget. So what if it now goes away because teams aren't allowed to play you anymore? What happens? And he's come up with what I think is a possible solution, which is all these Power 4 teams just pool their resources, and each one of them gives a certain amount of money, and they just give it to them and say, hey,
for no reason, just give it to them.
The reason would be you still want these mid-majors to exist. You still want them playing football. You know, you may no longer be able to help them, but you don't say, well, I'm sorry, but you know, Arkansas State, you got to go away because none of these teams are going to play you anymore. Or UAPB, you can't play football anymore. You won't be saying that. Here's some money. You can take that money and use it however you want, but here's the money to help your budget. And yes, you can continue to play football. And I've said this before. I don't think it will doom a lot of these schools. I think what will happen is their fans will still care about their games.
I think you're right, but some of the fun of those games is you kind of, you know, there's some times where they can upset them, like South Alabama and Oklahoma State last year.
Look, you can't have this both ways. If you're going to have to pay these players, and I believe we're at the point now where that's the only way to do it. You can't continue this unlimited NIL garbage, buying players and all that. They're going to have to do something to solve this problem where you're buying players through recruiting. So if they rework the rules, because the courts are now happy with what they're doing, and you're paying and they're satisfied you're giving the average athlete money to play football, so you're spending some of these big athletic budgets more on players, which is what they want, then you got to get more money. And the only way you can do that is to do what the TV people want, and they don't want those games.
No, they don't. Yeah, you're
right. They don't draw in ratings. I mean, what you're able to charge for a commercial within a game is based on your ratings of that game.
True. You're absolutely right. I'm just saying I would feel bad about some of those games going away.
But
I
just
feel
think
for them,
Petrino's come up with a positive that I never thought of. He just threw out that little gem. They just pay them for their trouble, that we can't play them.
That we can't play them
anymore.
Yeah, there you go. Hog Redneck asks, so now we have a 2-minute warning in college ball. Seems like very season there. It seems like every season, there are new rules to make college football more like the NFL. Why?
Okay, it's more like what we were talking about. I think it's done for money.
Money.
Yes, because that's another long commercial break.
It is.
And if you watch these, which I did, I watched 4 games. I watched the Florida State and Georgia Tech game, and then I watched Nevada and SMU.
SMU, yeah.
And in watching both of those games, I saw what happened when that 2-minute warning, one in the first half, one in the second half. It was a long commercial break.
It is a long commercial break. I will say that.
It's longer than a normal timeout.
Exactly.
So that's all about money. That's what that is.
Yeah, easy enough. I agree with you there. I'm like, man, they put something else in where they could take to commercial.
See,
Dang
I don't think that has anything to do with the NFL. I think it was just a way of coming up with making a little bit of extra money for the TV people.
Absolutely. H.L. McCamish says it looked like Georgia Tech's quarterback was having a little trouble there with the helmet communication system. I hope that doesn't happen to us. Any word on how it's worked in the scrimmage?
Well, Petrino basically said it was a headache, and he said he didn't like it at first. And he says that he's absolutely certain there's going to come a time when it doesn't work. It sounds very complicated. He says he's got one piece of equipment that's on one side that allows him to communicate with the quarterback, but then he's got another one that allows him to talk to the other coaches. So he's going to have to be going back and forth with all that stuff. Now, that particular quarterback, I don't know if he had a white noise problem or if his system wasn't working well. I didn't notice any of the other quarterbacks in the 2 games I watched having an issue, just him. And he was putting his hands over the ear hole. So,
yeah, I like to hear.
So it looked like he was blocking it. Maybe he's got a white noise problem. There are people that have this white noise thing where loud noises, you can't hear people. Like If I'm in a restaurant and
Yeah.
I'm across the table from my wife and she's talking to me and there's a lot of people making noise in there, I can't hear what she's saying. It's a white noise problem.
Right.
So maybe he had that. But Petrino said that the value of this for him, and we talked last week about this being a new technology. Some coaches are going to use it better than others. What Petrino said was, we're going to huddle.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, and now I'm envisioning this. Everybody gets together. Taylor Green gets the call from Petrino. He calls a play. Then Taylor Green tells them what the play is. How is that? That is a lot different than what we've seen. Remember all these plays where guys were jumping off sides because they were trying to signal everybody, and somebody out on the left tackle can't hear what's going on, and they're all supposed to be looking at each other. Now you know in the huddle what's been called. And then he said you come out as fast as you can and run the play, because you're the secret to, I think what he was saying is the secret to this is give your play call to the quarterback just as the communication is going off. That applies to the other team too.
Exactly.
So Taylor Green tells the team what play this is. They run out and line up. The other coaches can't talk.
Yeah, and the defense has no time to react.
Yeah, so that if they react, they're going to have to send a signal.
Yeah.
But they won't have as much time to react to the way Arkansas lines up. So
Exactly.
sounds like he's got that part of it figured out.
And I want to say this too, and I can't remember which coach it was, but talking to, I think it was either Petrino or Williams, one of them made the point that it is kind of hard to hear. It's going to be hard to hear that helmet communication in crazy environments.
Well,
so
again, it seemed to affect one quarterback and not the other.
Well, I don't know. Maybe one has a louder, maybe one has the volume turned up a little louder. I don't know. I mean, I think there is something to be said about the atmosphere and how.
I'm just excited about there being a huddle back. I mean, I can't remember, how long has it been since we've seen a huddle at Arkansas?
A long time. So.
So
Ernie Hogg doesn't agree with those calling for the targeting rule to be dialed back. He asked why. It's done what it was designed to do, drive down the totals of significant spinal and brain injuries.
yeah, well, I agree with that, but I do agree also that it needs to be modified, and here's why. Number one, not all of those injuries are the result of what now is referred to as targeting. We've talked a lot about these slip-on things they're putting on helmets now in practice, and now the NFL is going to that. And I talked about seeing one of those for the first time, and it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think the answer to this whole targeting thing is mostly the soft shell helmet, which there's not even a shell there. It's just made out of that roll bar material that's on roll bars in cars, you know, when they do these autocrosses, where it's all padded. And when you have helmet-to-helmet contact, it doesn't do what it does now. It still doesn't mean you would eliminate the targeting rule, but here's the problem with the targeting rule. Who's getting called for targeting? It's the defensive guy. What happens when the offensive guy does that? It's just as dangerous to him as it is somebody else. Now look, the head is made to move forward, backward, left, right, really in a 360-degree motion. So if you get hit any way like that, your body will react to that, and you won't break your neck generally, especially if you've got this soft shell helmet. Where you get the injuries and the fractures, the Chucky Mullins thing that happened at Ole Miss, is when you get head-to-head, helmet-to-helmet contact. Because why? Because the neck can't compress like that. It has nowhere to go when it's a direct hit up to down on the spine, right up here, the top cervical vertebrae. They just crack. And then that's where you get a broken neck or someone that would even die like that. So, how about a targeting rule that specifically says you can't lower your head like that? In the 7th grade, 1,000,000 years ago, Coach Vanoy stood out there and told us, don't tackle with your head down. You can't see what's going on. Tackle with your head up, slide your head, approach a ball carrier, make contact with it, and slide your head one way or the other, but keep your head up. So that's tackling. Tackling, you should never lower your head tackling. Now, what about running with the ball? As long as you're upright, I don't see why you couldn't have the same rule. You don't approach people by lowering your head like that. Now, when a guy's headed down, that's where you have a problem, because if you're going down, then that's when guys start going at each other. The problem is you can't solve every issue. There's no rule that can change every issue. But I think you could continue to reduce the number of significant injuries with soft shell helmets, and with a rule that says you can either tackle helmet to helmet or run helmet to helmet with the ball, lower your hip to run over somebody. Either one of those situations is a penalty, offense or defense. Right now, it's just on the defensive player.
Yeah, it is. And I think you're right. By changing the helmets, that's going to help out with what he was talking about with the significant spinal and brain injuries.
It will solve every problem except the direct on top of the helmet like that.
Yeah. I think you're right there, Mike. KY Hogs says, we're switching to basketball, Mike. I love Calipari's confidence. Playing Baylor and Dallas will boost Arkansas's recruiting in Texas. The schedule is scary, but he's not scared. Time to get these guys ready. Can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything is positive with this guy. Everything, right? Now, there was something that came out. I didn't have time to read it, but somebody was mad because some national writer came out and predicted the best backcourt and the top 10 backcourts or something. He didn't have Arkansas listed, and the guy was like, "Are you kidding me?" Look, he does recruit. He continues to recruit. He's recruiting. He's on so many of these guys for 2025 and 26. Now you're wondering if he's going to go back on what he said about recruiting too many freshmen, because he's recruiting a lot of freshmen. But I got to believe he'll still use the portal. But we can talk about this all we want. It's still not going to. We're not going to know till he play games. That's the whole thing. I think all Razorback fans are confident this guy's going to win here. But you still got all these Kentucky fans saying he can recruit, but he can't coach. You'll see, you'll see, you'll see. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
It's such a funny thing because everybody wants to, it's like the talking season for basketball right now is what we really don't know. And the other thing, too, is we did get to see because I had fans ask me, "Hey, what have you seen from Calipari's team? What have you seen from them?" I go, "I wish I could tell you, but all I get to see is those little social media clips like you do. You know as much as I do about this basketball team because we haven't seen them. Now, maybe, fingers crossed, maybe we might get to be invited to a practice a little closer to the season.
Hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet, folks. I'm fingers crossed right now that maybe we can see some practice because I would like to see what they look like in practice too, just to see how Calipari coaches in practice as well. Ann Jackson says, "I was told there is more NIL money available for Arkansas basketball than for the entire football team." We're talking 13 players compared to 85. Is that true?
Well, nobody knows if it's true for sure. I mean, if you talk to different people, here's what I kind of come up with. The total NIL availability for football is supposedly somewhere around $5 million. That doesn't seem like a lot for all those guys. And for basketball, it's supposedly $7 million. So yeah, that sounds really weird. But if it's true, and I don't know for sure that it's true, but if it's true, what does that tell us? What it tells me is if your head coach is a hot product, you got boosters that'll go, "Yeah, we'll throw the money in there." And if you've got a head coach that everybody's mad at right now because of last year, then no, they're not going to throw the money in there. So what Sam Pittman has to do is win this year. If he wins and the program starts going again, then I think the NIL money will go up.
But we've talked about this before. It's a backwards way of thinking. And I talk to fans about this all the time where I'm going, okay, but if you're not going to give money and he's working in an NIL deficit for 85 guys with $5 million and you have 13 and $7 million, he's working in a deficit. So he's having to figure out how to get people to come to the University of Arkansas the old-fashioned way without as much NIL money to play with.
Well, look what he said today about the practices being closed, because he never did that. Once the season started, he's closing them completely. And he was asked about that. And what did he say? This season is very important. It's different he knows this is it.
He knows he's on the hot
seat. So he doesn't want any distractions. He wants all those guys in there unified, and he doesn't want reporters going around, "Well, I saw that guy get hurt." And they put it out there, or whatever they see. So that tells me that Sam understands this is it.
Oh, he absolutely does. I mean, at media days when he made the whole thing about "thank you for asking about the hot seat. I know my seat's hot. I'm piping hot." I mean, he knows he's on the hot seat. I think it's actually smart to close down practices on his end. I think that is a smart decision. Also, I like the point of him making the media is like family to us, but sometimes you can have a bad relationship with your
family member. Look, all I'm saying is, I think this NIL problem for football gets solved if the program gets better. If people can see that they're on their way back up, if they can see this Petrino-Pittman thing working, if they can see, you've got Travis Williams over there, that guy's a really good D coordinator. If they can see all of that, then I think the NIL thing gets solved. It's not, what some people were saying a few months ago, Underdog just doesn't have any money in this state. There's no way they can ever compete with these schools.
I
I
disagree
think
with
there's
that.
money here, and I think
There
they
is.
can compete. And basketball is a good example. If you get a big enough name, they'll do it. Well, Sam Pittman's going to have to turn himself into a big enough name. That's it.
It's just, again, it's backwards, right? Because now you're asking him, other schools
Well,
are getting plenty of money, right? And I'm just giving people an
know.
idea. Other schools are getting plenty of money. You shut off that money because you want to see results. Well, guess what? Giving money might get you better players and give you better results.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm
the
going
way
to
it
say
is.
it. It's the way it is. So, you know, you guys keep thinking that way. I disagree with it. Eddie Lynn says we can probably forget Tony Vitello replacing Van Horn when he decides to retire. Tennessee just gave him a big fat raise, making him the highest paid coach in college baseball, more than double what DVH is making.
Yeah, I think it was $3 million a year.
Yeah.
DVH is 1.2. First of all, I'd say a couple of things about that. I don't think you have to worry about DVH's replacement anytime soon because I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah.
Even if they were to win the college, some people think all he wants is a College World Series and then he'll retire. I don't believe that. I think he's going to be around for a while. He knows he's got a good thing going. Right now, here's what Arkansas has going for it. If you ask around in college baseball, it's about the best staff out there for developing players. When a player comes here, they know they're going to get developed, and that helps.
And the facilities, too.
And the facilities help, and the fans help. What I read about this, and when I read this story about Vitello, is then they're also going to spend something like $100 million in having 7,000 seats. And I'm going, you're going to spend $100 million and end up with 7,000 seats? I mean,
Well, okay.
Arkansas's got about 11,000.
Yeah.
Now it's not that many actual seats, but they can seat about 11,000 right now,
Yeah.
and I think they'll add to that at some point in the future. And there are things about Tennessee baseball is still not what Arkansas baseball is at the respective schools. So, if what I'm told is true, and Vitello's always wanted to coach here,
Yeah.
if the time comes that Van Horn steps down, and that could be 5, 6, 7 years, and he's been at Tennessee a long enough time, you go, I want a new challenge. I don't think it would stop him from coming here, whatever they're paying him. He's not married. He doesn't need a lot of money. That's what I was told. This guy doesn't spend a lot of money. He doesn't.
There you go.
It's not like he goes to Europe and runs around all summer and spends a gajillion dollars. He's got pretty simple taste. So what's he going to do with all that extra money?
And I also think it's one thing to say, oh, he's probably not going to replace him. We just don't know when DVH will leave. Like you said, it could be 5 years. It could be 7 years. I mean,
exactly.
we just don't know where Tony will be
I
in
wouldn't-
that time.
I wouldn't rule Vitello out because of this. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. Popular Porkster asks, can you talk about the Aggies and their weirdness? I love this question. Why is it that every single Aggie fan I meet has the collective IQ of -20? Just some weird people down there in College Station. And I would love to hear your thoughts, Mike.
Well, it's not a low IQ. I know Aggies. I've got an uncle that's an Aggie. He's not.
And he's really smart, right?
He's a really smart guy. He's retired. He's one of the people who helped develop chemicals for Monsanto. So he's not dumb. It's not dumbness. Sometimes people that are very smart cannot have common sense. Now, this particular uncle that I had, when we were kids, and I've said this before, he's actually younger than me because my grandfather on my mother's side had 3 wives, and his mother was the youngest of the 3 wives. So he's my uncle, but he's actually younger than I am. And a lot of us ran around together, and so he was more like a cousin to me than an uncle, although he was an uncle. And he didn't have a lot of common sense. So there's that. However, I think the real issue there is all these Aggie traditions. Now, all schools have their traditions, and they're nice. You know, the gator chomp, the tomahawk, the yo-yo, the tomahawk chop, and the hog call and all that. And most schools have more than one.
Yeah.
And then we look at these things, these college things, and they're nice, okay? A&M's got too many of them. So many you can't keep up with them. And I think I think these guys get a headache trying to keep up, because if you've ever been to College Station, you run into one of these wackos on campus that know all of the traditions.
All the traditions,
if you violate even one of those things, they go bananas.
Yeah.
So can you imagine being an athlete on campus and have to know all this stuff? And everybody's always questioning why you're doing this, and you have to do this and that. It's just bizarro. And then I have no idea how this wacky thing developed with those guys in those Mr. Clean suits, whatever they are, What do they call those guys?
Mr.
The
Midnight
midnight
yell
leaders.
leaders. They're called yell leaders.
Yell leaders, what is that? They're cheerleaders, but they're wacko. And then this
Mr.
stuff that they
Glances.
do, and who invented that little hop step thing they do, and all those little weird gyrations that they do where they're going up and bending their back like, I don't know.
I just want to know why the bubbles. I
And
ask that all
that's
the time.
that's
The
a
bubbles,
relatively new
why?
thing. Somebody decided it would be good to have a bubble machine at baseball games.
I asked an Aggie fan about that when we were at the College World Series, Jeff and I, this past year, and I said, I just want to know the bubbles. Why the bubbles? And they go, I don't know either. I don't like that one. I don't like that one. That was their own people, their own Aggie fans. I mean, come on.
So they come up with so many of these things, and I think your brain starts getting fogged, because here's what I've noticed. The longer somebody is away, after they graduate and the longer they're away from that environment, they sort of get normal again.
They do, yeah.
Because I didn't like my uncle, who's not more like my cousin, but he's my uncle. I didn't like him at all. But then I hadn't seen him in about 30 years. And I went to a funeral where we were both pallbearers for my aunt's funeral. I think he was more like a sister-in-law for him. I'm trying to figure out what she was. But we were both there, and we were pallbearers, and so I got to talk to him for the first time in 30 years. He's about as normal as he could be. We got along great. And I think it's because he'd been away from all that stuff.
That holds true. That is a true statement, because, again, I go back to when I went to the College World Series, and we were surrounded by Aggie fans. Surrounded. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. But they were all like, older Aggie fans, so not the young kids.
Yeah.
That section was over
Yeah.
way out there. They were all pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they were making fun of themselves at one point, and I went, well, this is weird. They're not as weird as I thought.
I think the weirdness is more with you as a student.
True. And the further you are removed from graduation.
Because you get out of that goofy environment where you've got a million traditions that you have to keep up with.
It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, do you have to go to midnight yell practice? Is that mandatory? I don't know if it's not, but I wouldn't want to go to that stupid thing.
It's not mandatory. I mean,
well, they always have like thousands of
They
people
do.
up there, and
They
you
do.
think to yourself, are they all crazy? They want to sit there and watch those guys do hop, skip, and jump, and
tell terrible jokes.
Terrible jokes.
Terrible jokes.
They're not funny.
They aren't. Who told them they were funny? Who told them?
I don't know.
Oh gosh, Mike, we got to get to the bottom of why they are weird and like that. We have to know. It's going to be an age-old question for us on this show. But anyways, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.